until we saw Fede Álvarez's Evil Dead.
2013.
A crazy year. I don't have any reference to that. But what I will say is, we mentioned this last week, but this is the first kind of remake that we both watched together, because this is not following the same story. This is a retelling of a revisioning of the original story. So this is different in that way.
Like a reimagining, a different adaptation is not exactly it.
It's like it's tonally different. The characters have their own changes. And yeah.
We've updated it for, quote unquote modern audiences.
Yes.
Which actually brings to mind something I watched over the weekend. Which is the new 2025 Lee Winnell film, Wolfman.
Oh, the Wolfman.
Yeah.
I saw your star rating. It ended. It was a little less than average.
Yeah. That's because it was a little less than average film.
Do you want to plug your Letterboxd while we just mentioned star ratings?
Yeah, you can follow me on Letterboxd and most other places at that D Rosenberg.
And I believe that social media is the root of all evil. But I do have a Letterboxd, and it's at PJ the Mummy. So please follow us. But okay, tell me about it. Why didn't it ring all the bells?
It is. I mean, it's not the first time that they've, done a new Wolfman movie.
Yeah.
This is, but it's made by Universal and Blumhouse. Lee Winnell is directing. He is also the one who did the Invisible Man.
Which we both
loved that movie.
Great movie.
Couldn't say enough good things about that movie.
Yeah.
Wolfman, on the other hand, not as thrilled with. I had heard not stellar things about it going in, but I kind of try to go in, with a very open mind of just like, well, let's just let it wash over me and see.
I mean, you did that with Madam Web, and if you can do that with Madam Web, certainly you can do that with a Blumhouse remake of The Wolfman.
When you're right, you're right. There are a lot of like cool ideas in Wolfman, but overall, it was a kind of disappointing story. There's not much mystery there. The themes that are being kind of given to you, they are just handed to you as an audience. Like they are told to you and then told again to you just to make sure you didn't miss it the first time. Which is a shame. And the plot of the movie takes place over a very short amount of time.
Oh, okay.
And so instead of you being able to see how these characters interact with each other and what their relationships are together, you are told that.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah, mom and dad are kind of...
It's the Anakin Obi-Wan syndrome.
Yeah.
Where we are such good friends and we have so many adventures and we get along so well. And it's like, yeah, but we need to see those.
Yeah. And that's why they made, 7 seasons of the Clone Wars television show.
This can never, ever devolve into a Star Wars podcast. What I will say is we watched the Benicio del Toro. We were on a Wolfman kick for a while.
Yeah, 2010, baby.
Yeah, we watched that. And that's an interesting, and obviously I think we'll cover that movie
eventually,
when we wolf out with the Blood Moon or whatever the fuck it is. But when we watch that movie, they do have a twist in that movie. And I won't spoil that here. But it's a classic retelling of the original story, and so the mystery is gone. You're not focused on the mystery. You know who the Wolfman is, you know why he's doing what he's doing, but then the twist at the end makes it a new telling. Do you feel that was missed here, that there's not enough new to keep you engaged?
Yeah, there's not enough new for sure. And there's not really a twist. There's a reveal at one point in the film, but it is like the most easy thing to go like, oh, well, yeah, no, duh.
Because like the Benicio del Toro, I would call that a twist, a surprise reveal. And that was stellar.
Yeah.
Granted, it revolves around Anthony Hopkins, and good God, he could outact
the
God.
The cast of that movie is insane.
Right. If God decided he was a thespian, went to Juilliard, hit Broadway, pounded the pavement, and became a movie star, he would get the with, and then Anthony Hopkins would get the starring. Hello, Deadites, and welcome to the Third Channel Podcast.
Where we're back in the cabin, delving again into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan.
And a newbie to the genre. I'm PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And today the only thing we're here to talk about is horror. And of course, housekeeping. Because every podcast needs its own level of housekeeping.
Segment of that.
Yeah. So I know that there was something that you wanted to go over before we got into the meat and potatoes of this discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, one, I've been loving how we've been able to kind of blend these episodes back to back into the others. Mm-hmm. And I hope that at some point someone might take all of our episodes and cut off, the beginnings and the ends of them and splice them all together to where it's like an 8-hour epic that you could listen to all in one go.
Right.
Much like I was talking about last week.
Yes.
The Evil Dead trilogy, supercut of John Keogh.
Yeah.
A gentleman I've been speaking with, an editor who I've purchased several things from. I've got a couple more in the mail right now.
Yes.
That I'm waiting for. But I want to do a little bit of housekeeping about him because I don't know if I did a good enough job of kind of explaining who he is and what he's done.
Sure. Really quickly, before you get really into that was a master class in segueing into a topic.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. I've been thinking about it for a week.
Yeah, if anybody wants to sit down with some microphones, don't. There's enough podcasts out there. But if you decide to not take my advice and do it anyway, like we did, and you need a segue, listen to right here, then the rest of this episode, then every other episode we make for the rest of time. Derek, please continue.
So John, I've reached back out to him. I've been chatting with him. The main thing I want to say is that, of course, the second that I talk about him in our show, and I'm like, hey, go follow him on Instagram at edits at whatever. He stops using that one. He goes and switches to a different Instagram account. I think he wanted to kind of put his name out there a little bit more and not be kind of hidden. So now you can find him at John, Jon, Keogh, which is Keogh. So the whole thing is at Jon, Keogh.
John, you make good edits, but your choices on Instagram handles has made our job more difficult. I appreciate what you're doing, but come on, man. You're making our lives difficult.
I just wanted to, as soon as I sent people there.
Yeah.
He stopped.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Wanted to correct that, and I told him that I was like, "Hey, man, I'll fix this in the next one, whatever." But the other thing that I want to say is that, like, I think I just kind of made him sound like, yeah, it's just this dude on the internet who edits stuff real good.
Yeah, that's
how I speak on this show.
You talk good word, so.
But I wanted to kind of stress that. Like John, he has credits on IMDb. Jonathan Keogh, like you can find them. He's worked on films like Snowden, which is the Joseph Gordon-Levitt film from like 2016, I believe. He worked on Upgrade, which is that done by Lee Winnell as well, or am I crazy? And then he also apparently did some uncredited work on Spiral, the Chris Rock Saw spinoff. And then he's also worked for like the Criterion Collection, the Criterion Channel. He does different kind of like trailers and teaser supercuts and things for them as well. So he's worked with like some big name stuff out there as well. And then I guess he does this in like his off time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Definitely go check out John's stuff. It's really impressive, and keep an eye out for whatever he's working on next.
And John, we have pitched you, if for any reason you're listening to us now, which we hope you are, feel free to, reach out to us, and maybe we can call you in and you can guest on an episode. It'd be cool if, the work on Spiral that you did, if you want to guest on Spiral, that would be a pedigree far above what we deserve.
And if not then definitely for either X, Pearl, or Maxine.
Yeah,
because he has his, interwoven cut of that called the X Factor out there. So,
yeah, I think the only housekeeping that I want to do, and I have to preface this with, I've been thinking about this, watching this movie and rewatching this movie. It was a little strange because, rewatching Scream is fun. Rewatching, Army of Darkness is fun. You get to watch Bruce Campbell do a bunch of shit. Rewatching this movie.
Oh, you didn't have fun?
I have fun in the way that people like horror movies, but the bit of housekeeping for this one is we have some friends who are like reaching out to us and letting us know that they didn't really like horror either, like me, and that like I did a year ago with you, they've started kind of watching along with us, and as we talk about a movie, before we talk about the movie or after, they watch it themselves, and they've really enjoyed it. But this is going to be a bit of a tonal shift for our show. Every movie that we've watched so far is either, it's like we've done 70s, 80s, and 90s. All of our movies are camp and silly. And even the more brutal elements of them have been mostly hidden behind characters and, masked killers and very slashery and whatnot. This movie's not like that at all.
No.
This movie, I would say, is the first true to blue modern horror movie that we're going to talk about, and it is pretty brutal. So if you are watching along with us, if you don't have your sea legs for this shit yet, if you are susceptible to really bad gore or really bad, body horror and stuff like that, this is where this show might put you to the test. But I tell you what, it put me to the test too. We had seen the Scream franchise and we jumped right in. We're trying to do this as much in order as how we originally saw them as we can. This was the second franchise we ever watched. And I think this was the first movie that we saw together where it really was like, I don't know that I can do this. But I powered through it, and this movie is very good.
Yes. It's one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of a lot of the remakes that have been made for horror films. Like, sure. I'm not immediately a person who just hates something because it's like, oh yeah, why are they rebooting that? And it's just like, no, sometimes I ask the question of like, do we really need a remake or a reboot of that? But if they can, show me something that I haven't seen before, or they can deliver it to me in a way that's like interesting and new, then it's like, yeah, I'll give it the chance. Because it doesn't take away from that original film. That original film is always going to be there. Yeah,
it's just a modern telling. A lot of the remakes do that well, and we'll discuss those. A lot of the remakes do that terribly, and we'll get to those as well.
But this one I've always been impressed with.
Yeah,
I think it is the logical, modern kind of reimagining of the events of the original, The Evil Dead, and the fact that the original team of Robert Tappert, Sam Raimi, and Bruce Campbell are all on board as producers. Well, that helps a great deal.
And that was a question that I asked you because we're watching it, and it's just so tonally different. Even from the original, even from The Evil Dead, which is, it's not as silly as the series then becomes. And it's like, but still, this is infinitely darker. It's in every way, even the subject matter, of addiction and all of the darkness that comes with that storytelling, it is still so much darker than...
Yeah, it's not just kids having fun going on vacation.
Right. So I remember asking you, rewatching it, it was like, do they like this remake? Is that a thing that Sam and Bruce and them like? And you surprised me with that fact that they were on board. Not only that, but they helped make the movie. It makes it easier to watch. The whole time you're not... If it weren't that way, the whole time I was watching it, it'd be like, it's the competition in my brain of original versus remake. Yeah.
Is this sacrilege? Or,
does this have the blessing? Yeah.
No, I get that. Do you want to touch on what it is kind of a very similar tale to the original.
The IMDb summary says, 5 friends head to a remote cabin where the discovery of a book of the dead leads them to unwittingly summon up demons living in the nearby woods. I'm going to say this one's mid. Okay. It doesn't talk about the main characters. It doesn't go into a lot of the reasons for things. The reason
why they're there.
Yeah, which is good for a summary.
I think that one's important.
Yeah. Which is, and we touched on this a second ago, but it is a different reason. Originally, it's vacation. Now they're going there for a reason. And I think that reason makes it, from the jump, it makes it a harder movie to kind of like relax. And that's kind of what I mean with the housekeeping of this one's different is there's not a lot. We're not going to be able to talk about Mrs. Mac hiding booze in the house because that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. She has a problem, but It's funny.
Yeah. It's Mia has a problem in this one, and it's not funny.
It's not funny at all. Miss Mac is looking for a cat. She's drunk. She gets pulleyed up some stairs, and she's dead. And you know what? It was funny the whole time. We laughed.
We laughed and laughed.
I'm worried about this movie, man. It freaks me out. You want to go back to talk about Black Christmas?
No.
Okay. Let's tackle Evil Dead.
Yeah. Evil Dead. Originally released, it had a screening at South by Southwest, March 8th of 2013.
Well, if that's a film festival, we have to come up with a third channel name for it. South by Southwest Airlines.
Okay.
That's that film festival.
Okay, did we come up with one for Citrus?
Citrus.
Okay.
Like the fruit.
We did it. It then had its U.S. Theatrical release April 5th of 2013. So just, a month later. Mm-hmm. It's directed by Fede Álvarez, as you have said. It's also written by Fede Álvarez, and I am going to butcher this name. I probably should have put this into a pronunciation thing online and tried to give it, figure this out. Because it's written by Fede Álvarez and
Rodo Se Agubes.
Thanks, Google. Because I was just going to keep butchering it more and more every time. So that they work as a writing team a lot of times, it seems, because Fede Álvarez, if you don't know, he also has directed the movies Don't Breathe in 2016. Mm-hmm. He did The Girl in the Spider's Web 2018, which is a kind of a soft reboot of The Girl with Dragon Tattoo that David Fincher did, his version. And then most recently, he directed Alien Romulus last year. Rodo, I'm using his first name here, he also was the writer on Evil Dead, Don't Breathe 2. He and Fede also worked, they did the story for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, the Netflix one.
Oh, okay.
And then he was a writer on Alien Romulus as well. So they kind of work together a lot of the same movies there. Our producers I've already mentioned, but are Robert Tappert, Sam Raimi, and Bruce Campbell, lifelong friends, the team behind the
vision,
Dead. Cinematography on this one is Aaron Morton. And I had to look this up of what else he has done. And I'm pretty impressed, actually. He has worked on a couple episodes of Black Mirror. So he did Playtest.
I love that fucking episode
I know, it's one of my favorite. With Wyatt Russell.
It's the first episode of Black Mirror I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah.
He also was cinematographer for Metalhead, which is from season 4.
I don't think I've seen that.
That one I've seen, but I wasn't as thrilled with that one, the story of it as well.
Okay.
But more important. Oh, and then he also was the cinematographer on the Bandersnatch, Choose Your Own Adventure movie thing that they did for Black Mirror. More importantly, he was the cinematographer on Abigail, which is not a movie that I loved, but it is directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett.
Right.
However you pronounce it, who did Scream 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And then The First Omen.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That movie's great.
Yeah. Loved that.
Yeah.
Shot the hell out of that movie. Shot the hell out of this movie, too.
They shot the hell out of The First Omen in places no one ever wanted to see. And if you get that reference, please like and subscribe.
Edited by Brian Shaw. The budget on this one.
Oh, no.
What are we doing?
Okay, well, I'm going to levy a guess here that the budget was $27 million.
$27 million.
Ready? I got you.
$17 million.
I was 10 off.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad. But it brought home a crisp $97.5 million.
Oh, it didn't do bad at all.
No, it did really well, which is saying something with, that era of people, like I said, immediately hating every horror remake because it is a remake.
Yeah.
Even though this one has been stressed over the years in different ways from different people who've worked on this project. Is it a reboot? Is it a remake? Is it a reimagining? Is it a sequel? Does any of that really matter?
No. Well, and we'll kind of get more into that with, Evil Dead Rise as well. But I think if this lives in the same kind of ballpark universe as Evil Dead Rise, I think it's just a telling of the same story in different locations means that you can just say it shares a universe.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't really fucking matter. It's not like the characters from one are going to cross over with the other. That's what the TV show is for.
We will touch on all of that later in this conversation and next week.
So, stay tuned.
Basically, just to start off the kind of backstory of all this, talks for a fourth Evil Dead film began as far back as like 2004. Bruce Campbell has been asked over and over and over again in all sorts of things because, after Army of Darkness, he goes on to kind of get this cult following of his own. He, writes a book and what is it? It's like If Chins Could Talk or something.
That's fantastic.
It's probably not the exact title, but it's something like that. He even stars in a movie that's called His Name is Bruce, which is he's playing himself. And most of the actors who are from The Evil Dead and Evil Dead come back to play themselves within this movie. And so he's been asked over and over again, when are you going to do another Evil Dead?
Yeah.
And
he's like, when I'm done filming all these episodes of Burn Notice.
Pretty much. He was the wrong person to ask because Bruce was apparently of the three, he was the one that he held out the longest of like, I don't think it's a good idea for us to remake this. Robert Tappert, he was the one who said like, yeah, it's a good possibility we should do an Evil Dead remake of some kind. Sam Raimi agreed. Sam was very enthusiastic. He was saying that, The Evil Dead lends itself to be the type of movie that should be remade with a modern budget, a modern, special effects, and the way that horror films are shot now. You could really crank it up. You could really do it right.
Yeah.
And, let a new generation of filmmakers kind of shine. And Campbell, Bruce was not as thrilled with that idea because he didn't want either someone to take over the role as Ash.
I get that.
Because one, it's like he didn't want to put that on anybody.
Yeah.
I've seen an interview of him saying like, you can't just throw anybody in there and just go like, yeah, do that big, over the top performance that guy did. And now they're just stuck doing that.
Right.
So he didn't want that. And then he knew that like the fans would be not happy if you just, redid Ash.
Yeah. If we have learned one thing in this modern world, it's that fans of old stuff take those details and just eviscerate actors. How many times do you read the article headline like so-and-so has deleted all socials after getting death threats? Like, yeah.
So, I mean, very wise that they then went, nope, we're going to talk about a new set of characters. There's not going to be an Ash. There's not even going to be like this is kind of the Ash of the story. And it's like, yeah, that was a wise idea.
Yeah, I agree.
In 2009 is when Bruce and Raimi, they basically stated that whatever proposed remake that they had thought of was going nowhere, basically just due to negative fan reaction, just to the idea. But then a couple years later, April of 2011, Bruce Campbell actually stated on an AMA on Reddit that they are working on a remake of Evil Dead and that he was very happy with the script. It was awesome. And that he, the fans have his word at that. And so the project officially was announced in July of 2011. It's from Ghost House Pictures, is the film and television production company that was founded in 2002 by Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert. So they actually, one of the first movies that they produced there was The Grudge, like the Sarah Michelle Gellar American remake of the Japanese Ju-on The Grudge film.
Which, as of right now, I have not seen any of The Grudges.
I have never seen the originals. I have seen that remake because I love the American version of The Ring.
Yeah.
And so, the next year, I believe, is when they did The Grudge. But I wasn't thrilled with that one. But I'd like to go back and watch the original. They also did Boogeyman, The Messengers, 30 Days of Night, Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, The Possession, of course, Evil Dead. They did the Poltergeist remake, which is just terrible. And then they produced Don't Breathe and eventually Evil Dead Rise. Okay. So that's, that's just a smattering of what they've done there.
Most of that is good.
Yeah, like honestly, and they did, all of the Grudge sequels, all the sequels to any of those things that I just mentioned. Ghost House did that as well. Fede Álvarez and Rodo, they co-wrote the script, and then that was doctored by Diablo Cody.
Okay.
Diablo Cody is a name that you may or may not know. She wrote Juno and Jennifer's Body, if I'm not mistaken, which I love both those movies. And so the reason for that is that they were trying to more kind of Americanize the script because English is not either Fede or Rodo's native tongue, their first language.
You'd never guess with the names Fede and Rodo.
Yeah, it's
I would imagine they speak Huttese.
Are we talking about Star Wars again?
No, no, we can't.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Cut all that.
Fede got the job after writing and directing basically it was a 5-minute short film that's called Panic Attack. I believe you can still find it on YouTube, and it became this huge hit. It's like giant robots attacking Earth, and he did all the like CGI special effects for it and everything because that's kind of where he has his background in. And so just from the strength of that alone, he got the job. But he confirmed very early on that the film does not employ CGI for its effects, except for like touch-up work. So removing wires or cleaning up some something on the appliances that they use. Everything else is as practical as you could absolutely be. And like watching the production diaries and things like that on the Shout Factory 4K that I have, I mean, yeah, it's impressive like what they were able to do.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of like magic, like stage magic.
Okay.
And so he did a lot of research into magic tricks and illusions. And so much like they did in the first film, it's like using those things to their advantage. And the first film meaning the original, The Evil Dead. Yeah. Using those things to their advantage to, create these effects. And then Fede had tweeted on January 28th of 2013 that the film, of course, got an NC-17 rating.
Yeah. So that's two for 4 now, right? The original and Dead by Dawn.
They all initially got like the X rating and then the NC-17 rating.
Goodness gracious.
They always try and cut it down. The Evil Dead is released unrated. Like whenever it came out, because it was kind of like an indie flick, they were just like, whatever, we're putting it out. It's never going to get a rating. The others, they trimmed until they could get an R rating because contractually, just like with this one, they had to bring it down to an R.
This one I get.
Yeah.
This one I totally get.
And it's funny just the difference in like what constituted an X or an NC-17 in the 80s and 90s versus 10 years later.
Yeah.
Like it was wild, but made a bunch of money and generally positive reviews from people. Yeah, which is very, very, I'm happy about.
Yeah, as you mentioned, watching it with different cuts, I will say something to our audience. This is one of those movies where it's going to be kind of hard to watch. We were able to watch it because Derek is a compulsive Blu-ray buyer. Yeah. So he had a copy of it, but we because before that we were having an issue with what we play our Blu-rays on, and so we were just trying to see if it streams anywhere, and it's like you could buy it on Amazon, I believe, but outside of that there was no way. So if you I'm not saying I agree with torrents or pirating because there's that ad in front of a lot of movies. It's like you wouldn't download a car. Well, let's be honest, we would. If I could download a car, I'd do that in a heartbeat. So if you can find it, however you want. If you want to be a pirate, you be a pirate. If you want to buy a Blu-ray, you buy a Blu-ray. You want to give money to the bald man Bezos, you give money to that Bezos bald man. But good luck, because it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, right now, as we are recording, and I had this question earlier today from someone who had reached out. I'm just like, hey, where can I watch Evil Dead? It's like, unless you want to pay for it, not anywhere currently. It is not streaming, but that can always change. Hopefully. I've seen it on places before. Hopefully we'll see it again.
Hey, Tubi, you want to sponsor us? You want to also stream Evil Dead? Do both of those things.
Listen, you gotta get out of those clothes.
You have to get me out of here.
Yeah, look, nobody said this is gonna be easy.
You don't understand. There was something in the woods, David. And I think it's in here with us now.
I love those lines. The way
Yeah.
that they are delivered, it is something that has stuck with me from the first time I saw it.
It's like stilted.
Yes.
It's like that's not how people talk. And it's the first sign that something is very wrong.
Very wrong.
Well, no, that's not the first sign. That's the first sign to the other people that something's very wrong. Unfortunately for us, our sign comes in the way of kind of yet again trigger warning for the same reasons as Evil Dead movies beforehand. Something about the telling of this story. If it's in a cabin in the woods, your female protagonist gets sexually assaulted by foliage. There is no way around that. I don't know why they keep doing it, but that happens in this one.
Yeah. We will give another trigger warning when we get closer to that scene.
Yeah.
But this is an initial one of like, hey, that is something that happens in this film.
Yes.
What's funny is like I do remember that line delivery from the very first time I saw it. I saw this movie in theaters, and it was with a friend of mine named Holly, and I don't know if she listens or not, but it was kind of the first time we had ever really hung out as friends. She had come over to my apartment at that point, and I was watching The Evil Dead, like Sam Raimi's original, because
Right.
I was about to go see Evil Dead.
Oh, so you've been doing this for a very long time.
Forever, man.
Why don't you and Holly have a podcast then? Huh? I'm the afterthought.
That's true.
Sorry. I'm doing that thing again that our therapist says I should stop doing.
Yeah.
Talking. Our therapist
It's really
is mean.
hard. It's really hard to do on a podcast.
Yeah, our podcast couples counselor is mean as fuck to me, dude.
Yeah, that's because I pay her to say those things.
Oh my God.
But she came in and I was watching The Evil Dead, and I kind of explained, just kind of threw out, yeah, I'm planning on going to see the remake of this tonight. I don't know if you've seen this or have any interest in seeing that with me. And like shockingly was like, yeah, I'll go see that. I have no idea what this is, but yeah. And so we went and saw Evil Dead. And if you're listening now and you have watched Evil Dead 2013 and know, even after everything that PJ said of like setting up the extreme level of violence and gore and everything else in this film,
Well, even
that's a
like,
hell of a way to meet somebody.
yeah, even like the gross sexual dialogue, because these
Yeah.
movies are filled with that
Yes.
always, but like this one's specifically gross. And it's like, oh, you look over and you're like, hey, I get it if you don't want to be my friend after this.
Yeah, if this like completely ruined any chance at a friendship.
Literally, our podcast is because of the exact same story, but she is me instead. That's how the story played out. But if it weren't Scream, if it were Evil Dead Rise instead, I don't know that I would have had the strength to do any of this. I'd have been like, bro, I regret doing this so much.
Well, I'm glad that it worked the way it did.
Yeah. This movie immediately subverts your expectations. It immediately flips the story on its head because you have an idea of what to expect. And then instead of greeting teenagers that are happy and going to the woods to have a party in a cabin, instead it's like an old crone in a dirty house chanting and in the captions, in the subtitles, it says she's speaking Welsh.
Yeah.
And there is a girl tied to like the main pillar, the support column of this home, and is like coming to and is like, what's going on? Dad, what's going on? And you're like, oh, they're going to sacrifice her. It's like, because you can see she's like, the old woman's like rifling through a book. And it's clearly, if you know the series.
That's the thing about this movie is it's the first time that it really feels like the audience knows more than what the people in the movie know.
Yeah.
And we have our idea of how things are going to go.
Because they wink at it with the art in the book and the blood stains and whatnot. They wink at it. But then
Yes.
this man, this glasses wearing dad walks up and he's like, baby, it's okay. It's all right, honey. She's like, who are those people? And it cuts over and it's very like the Sawyer family. It's very like one of them looks like he has like terrible burns.
Yeah, that person apparently had survived 2 plane crashes, was explained by Robert Tappert in
The character or the man?
The Man.
Whoa.
Not explained by Robert Tappert. He wasn't on the commentary. By Fede Álvarez. But yes, the actor who plays that had apparently survived 2 plane crashes, was the bit of information. Robert Tappert's son is the boy in that scene. That's what made me think of that.
Oh my God.
And then the woman, I found this out today.
The old crone.
She's doing like the reading of the book, and she is talking about like only the book can undo what the book has done.
Right.
And she is an actress named Sienna Davis, and she'd later play the Deadite possessed lady in the pilot episode of Ash versus Evil Dead.
Huh.
So even
That's
like
funny.
from the promos and stuff, you've probably seen her because Ash fights this Deadite woman in his trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as soon as I read that, it was like it clicked in my brain. It's like, oh my God, that is her.
That's fucking amazing.
But yeah, I love that they kind of use those same people over and over again.
Well, I don't know how many times you can use a man who survived 2 plane crashes. I guess at least twice.
Yes.
But you've got this amazing interaction where the girl is like, what's happening? Where's mom? And the dad's like, you killed her, sweetheart. You murdered your mom. You know that. And we're waiting for the reveal to be something that it isn't. And then she's possessed and screaming horrific things. The contacts are very Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you pointed that out in our rewatch the other day, and I thought that was the funniest thing ever.
It is so the problem for me is that the makeup is pretty good. It's pretty generic. It's they're not immediately rotten. It's they are affected by wounds that they are self-afflicting for most of this film. But the eyes are so clearly contacts. It's like they could have done something to make them look even more bloodshot, something in post-production.
Yeah.
But it just very much looks like contacts. But that one little nitpick out the window, the father then douses the daughter in gasoline and sets her on fucking fire, and she starts screaming at him.
But still just screaming like horrific things.
I'm going to tear your fucking soul out.
I'm going to kill you just like I killed your wife.
Your daughter's soul is burning in hell. All this awesome, really cool, rad Satan shit. But yeah, no. And then he blows her fucking brains out. And that's the opening of the movie.
Yeah. And then we just smash cut to Evil Dead and the score swells.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
It is as close to Sam Raimi's sort of his style of scene transitions as you can get while still maintaining individuality, because it's not Sam Raimi, but it feels like it.
Yeah. Which that's an interesting point to make, because the immediate next shot is the forest, but it's upside down.
Yes.
And the camera then tilts upwards, which would be downwards. Anyway, it's like a helicopter shot. And it's much like the opening of The Shining, where it's a bunch of aerial shots following this Jeep through the forest. And apparently that was like an idea to flip it upside down was an idea made in post. Like they shot it originally and he thought, you know what? The cinematography and choices that Sam Raimi made in that first movie, like I want to make those choices and I want to do things that are out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And it also just doing something like that it's very disorienting at first.
Yeah.
And depending on people's like equilibrium and stuff, like it can really throw people off, those sorts of flip shots. I'll also say the very first shot of the film showing the girl before she's taken down into the basement and doused in gasoline and burned alive. It is a vertigo shot, like a vertigo zoom, which I don't know if you know what that is. It's a dolly zoom. You've seen this shot a million times. You see it like 3 times in this movie. They use it for different things, but it is a probably not the very first time it was ever done, but the most famous time that it was done for the first time was in Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. It's used several times, and it's called a dolly zoom because it's a camera on a dolly track. And so they are either moving the camera closer to the subject or further away from the subject. And as they're doing that, they are zooming in the opposite direction. And so what it does is it's changing the focal length as it's moving. And so it does this weird effect where like the background and the person are like changing, they're like shifting either toward each other or away from each other. And it's a very disorienting visual.
It reminds me of how they used to do old animation where there would be, slates and you'd have the very farthest background would be like the sun. And then the next one would be a hill. And so as you would move into frame in an animation, they would just take those plates and smash them closer together.
The multi-layered camera, I believe is what that's called. But yeah, it
really
has
effective.
a similar effect, but like in real life. So that's that's what they were trying to achieve in a way. And so the most famous, I'll say, after Vertigo is probably Jaws. But the shot of Sheriff Brody on the beach, like the first time that the shark attack happens on the crowded beach, and the camera does that, like pushes in on him, zooming out at the same time. It's that like, oh my God, a realization is happening. And it's kind of used to show that. Or in this case, it's just it throws you off.
Yeah.
And you see it multiple times in this, but very interesting shots just to start this film.
We follow our characters in a strange, euphoric, upside down shot. Yeah,
they make it to the cabin. As it kind of crosses the threshold into like the yard of the cabin. There is the join us.
Yeah.
Except it's more like join us. It's deeper than what I did the first time.
I like that too because again, same, different. It is the same. It's the same dialogue. It's the same sort of otherworldly feeling, but this one focused a lot on sound design. This movie focused a lot on sound design, and it's like a guttural, old feeling. It's really good.
If I'm not mistaken, it is one of the join us from the original The Evil Dead.
Just put through a lot of filters.
They do that a couple times. There are lines of dialogue used directly from that. They just use the same thing.
What I will say is this is yet another example of taking the narrative of the original and flipping it on its head so that it's so different from this that you're almost kind of shunted out of familiarity. You've got the original The Evil Dead. They're just hanging out and just having fun. You follow a Jeep through the woods. It's very classic storytelling. Oh, they're young. They're going to have a good time. And then they show up and everyone is immediately pissed at David, who we think is our protagonist and his girlfriend, but they are not. Because we are then kind of introduced to our lead, Mia. And it is revealed that they are not there to have a fun time. They're also estranged. And the reason all of these estranged people are here at this cabin is because Mia is addicted to presumably heroin. And they are in a cabin in the woods that used to belong to a family member. And they are there to withdraw her out of her heroin addiction.
3 days cold turkey.
Yeah.
That is the whole idea here. Mia is first introduced. She's sitting on the rusted out shell of a 1974 Oldsmobile Delta 88. So if you're paying attention closely at home, it's not the same as Sam Raimi's, which was a 1973 Delta 88. But it is put there as a reference to that.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, they have their little moment. Clearly, they're brother and sister. They haven't seen each other for a while. He left for whatever reason. It is revealed that their mother had mental health issues and I believe was in a home for that and died in that mental health hospital.
Yeah.
And he left at some point during that. But in this little moment between them, he does the like, hey, what's this behind your ear bit, and pulls out a necklace of a magnifying glass.
Yes.
Just like from the original.
And what's funny is that in the viewing, and I'm going to, only for this one little detail, I'm going to skip ahead. In the viewing of this with you the other day, we watched it together to rewatch it. And I was like, oh, that chain's going to turn into his skull any minute now. And then later, of course, it fucking does.
Oh, it does. It's one of the many, homages to the original, which I think are well done because they are placed in ways that I'm like, yeah, I get it, but you're not like beating me over the head with it.
I find that I have a problem, and this is a discussion that's worth having because we're in remake territory. I find that I have a problem when your callbacky stuff it takes over. It takes precedent over your storytelling. It's, well, we don't care about the story. That's not really important. You're going to like it because it's the same. But look, Remember this? Don't you love this thing? Versus this, where it's like a totally different reason for that necklace to exist, being given to a completely different kind of relationship from two completely different people. But it's like, oh, and we're going to make it look like this because they did that in the first. And it's blink and you miss it. Yep. I like references like that. That makes me feel good. Makes me feel cozy.
Yeah.
Everything else about this movie makes me feel like trash. But those little touches is like a warm blanket while your house is on fire.
That'll happen later. And the other thing that I'll stress, because this movie is a lot of setup payoff.
Yes.
And is something I love in a movie.
It's also a masterclass in direction of, hey, my actors, this is what I imagine the monsters act like, because they all have the same sort of characterization. And we'll get there, obviously, but if we're talking about things that we really like, the references, the payoffs, and just the physical body acting of this movie, it's exceptional in all three of those things.
Yeah, I fully agree. The last thing that she says here in their little exchange is like, promise me you'll stay with me until the end. Because that is very much something that comes back later, gets paid off.
Oh, and in my notes, I had, from the very beginning, the girl who is doused in gasoline and has her head blown off. She says, like, I'm going to kill you like I killed your wife. And as she's saying wife, she's like on fire. But it's the strangest line delivery because she doesn't say wife. She goes, like I killed your wife. And doesn't finish it. And it caught me off guard because I was like, you wait to hear the end of the word. And I was like, so is she quiet? Like I killed your why? Why'd I do that? I'm just a stinker, you know?
I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah. And then I wrote in my notes, the real Evil Dead was the drugs we did along the way.
Wow.
That catches me up to this. I took 3 notes. The third one is at the end of the movie. I was taking it in.
Hey, this one is one that you just kind of have to let pour vomit all over you. Another, a dumb thing I will mention right here, because it was on the IMDb facts page, is that if you take the first letters of the main characters' names, David, Eric, Mia, Olivia, and Natalie, the letters spell out demon.
I was thinking, like, what, Edamn? Like, I couldn't figure it out. Demon.
I have to imagine that was done on purpose whenever they wrote this film.
Or maybe not.
Maybe not. I'll also say, just to give some information here, Mia is played by Jane Levy. She, after this, is in Don't Breathe. She was in a movie called Monster Trucks in 2016, which is funny if you know what that movie is. She was apparently in Twin Peaks: The Return. She, at least an episode or 2. She was in Castle Rock, which is the series based on like Stephen King stories. And then she is in the 2023 remake of The Toxic Avenger. David is played by Shiloh Fernandez. He was in a 2008 horror film called Dead Girl, which I do not believe you've seen. I have seen that a couple of years ago, and that one's a weird one.
Okay.
So if you know that one, he was in the 2011 Red Riding Hood with it was like that kind of action romance with oh my God, what is her name from Mean Girls? And she was in
Amanda Seyfried?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. There's a weird period of time. It's like right after that, after that Heath Ledger Brothers Grimm movie that they started doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was in another horror movie in 2015 called Return to Sender, and he played this role again in Evil Dead: The Game in 2022. So he gave the voice for that.
Okay.
Which I've played very little of.
Okay.
So we'll have to dust that off and do it again.
What is it on the SNES? You're saying dust it off. It's probably a PS3 game.
No, it's on Xbox One. I have it right in there.
Oh, shit.
Let's just turn this off and we'll go play.
The Xbox red ringed, so we're back.
Oh, yeah.
The Xbox One red ringed.
Yeah, we'll have to do the towel trick and try again later. Eric, who is also introduced in this, he's the one he's got the long hair and the glasses, and he looks like he's stepped right out of like the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Which is kind of done on purpose. Fede was very much like, I don't want to have cell phones in this. I don't want to have any modern technology because I want it to just kind of feel like it could be anytime.
Sure. And I think that pays off. I think that
But
does well.
he was in Southland Tales. Later, he was in a movie called Ava's Possessions. He was in Netflix's You for at least a season. And he was in American Horror Story 1984. And apparently he has a role that I don't know what it is, Daredevil Born Again.
Oh,
I don't know who he's playing, but we're going to see him very soon.
I don't know, but I'm very excited.
And then Olivia, she was in, she's played by Jessica Lucas, and she was in Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge,
Oh my God.
for all you Halloween Town fans out there.
I like
She's
Halloween
also,
Town.
yeah, same. She's also in, she was in She's the Man.
Oh, was she the man?
She was not. With
No, that was Amanda
with
Bynes.
And then she was in Cloverfield, which is where I know her from.
Oh.
In 2008, she's in a movie called Amusement, and then later she played someone in Gotham, the Batman origin show. And Natalie is played by Elizabeth Blackmore. And the only other things that I really found that she did after this was Vampire Diaries, and she was in like a season of Supernatural.
Okay.
So, kind of TV actress there.
Yeah.
But yes, their names all together spell out the word demon. And they gather around the well there outside the cabin, and Mia, pledges that she's gonna get clean. This is it's gonna work this time.
Then the whole demon just sits around and watches.
Yeah. Dumps all of her drugs in the well, and they find that the cabin door has been broken into.
Yeah. Of course, she dumps her drugs down the well, and then the well people do them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't see that, but I assume that would be like a spinoff.
Yeah, the well people are the people from the beginning of the movie who lead to that poor girl's death. She wasn't a demon. She was just crazy high.
Out of her mind on
Heroin, I presume.
Yeah.
Heroin, I presume.
Whenever they go inside, Mia immediately notices a smell.
Yes, which okay, so here's a fun fact. Because I've never done hard drugs. I've really never done any drugs.
At the time of this recording.
Yeah, but once I see Jaws, I'm also going to do crack. But I don't know. Those things seem like they go together.
No.
So here's something you may not know, audience out there, if you've never struggled with addiction. I struggled with addiction with cigarettes. It's the withdrawal's not as severe. It's very deadly. So just out of the blue, a little less than a year ago, my brother and I both just decided, because he and I both were habitual smokers, and we just decided to quit. And it's hard. It messes with you in a lot of ways. And a lot of those ways are physical. A lot of them are emotional. But that is a real thing, is your sense of smell. Because smoking specifically, the actual smoke kind of affects the way your nose, like the sensitivity of your nose, which is why when you are around a smoker, you notice how much like smoke they smell and they don't. But yeah, your sense of smell gets dialed up once you get that back. And you are already predisposed. You're nauseous, your head hurts, you're irritable as shit. And then you smell way better than you have been used to smelling. So I relate to that in a weird way.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that we find out the reason that there is a terrible smell.
Yeah, is a bunch of dead fucking cats.
Yeah. Which we do see in that opening scene with the witchcraft being done in the basement.
Yeah. Presumably it's the same basement.
Oh yeah, we know that for sure, and I'll explain in a little bit, because there is a moment that is another one of my like film pet peeves. We'll add it to the list when we get there.
Do we have a track of?
The only one that I've said so far is in Scream 4. Is it Scream 4? Where he calls Sydney and he's like, "Turn on the TV," and she turns on the news, and it's on the channel. It's on the news. It's at the statement going like, and Gail was, stabbed at, Stabathon. I hate that. So she should have had to change a channel or something.
Okay, so we'll pin in that, and then when we get to the other pet peeve, we'll have to make a list.
Yeah. So they, are kind of collecting themselves, or introducing, these characters talking amongst themselves. We learn that this is, I believe, Mia and David's family's cabin. They talk about their mother, and she, she's having these memories, and she's talking about like, oh yeah, remember that lullaby that mom used to sing us? And she kind of sings a couple bars of that, but that's something that comes back later. This is also where the nail gun is introduced.
Yes.
Which comes back in a big way later.
Yeah.
David is fixing the door. And that's whenever he is talking with Olivia and she's saying like, we've tried this before. This isn't the first time we've tried to go cold turkey. You weren't here last time because you were off doing your thing. But she is going to do everything in her power to get us to take her back to society and not let this work.
Yeah.
And during that scene, Eric is sitting in the swing on the porch and he's playing with a deck of cards, much in the same way that it's a reference to them doing the cards in The Evil Dead. Other thing I'll point out right now, just because I guess this is the best time, is that much like Evil Dead 2, this was shot on like two very different sets. They have the outdoor set of the cabin itself. So all of this scene is kind of shot at an actual location. The remainder of this is pretty much all shot on like stages on a sound stage because they wanted it to be all within their control for, you know, lighting and effects and everything else that they were doing.
And also they watched The Evil Dead with commentary and found out that if you shoot an entire movie in Tennessee in the winter, your life is going to be fucking miserable.
They probably did that.
Yeah. They probably did a little bit of research.
They asked Sam and Bruce and Rob and they were like,
Jeeves.
No, don't do it.
Don't bake your shirt into a plate on a radiator, Bruce Campbell. Don't do that.
But that being said, the opposite of what they did in Evil Dead 2, 95% of this movie was shot in chronological order. So that way they actually had a running, you know, oh, we've splashed this person with blood. Okay, that's fine. We don't have to clean them off and then try and figure out when does this take place in the movie? It's like, no.
Right.
All of it is just we shoot it all as much as we can in order. We go back and get a couple pickups later.
Yeah, I suppose if you're doing as many of your special effects as you can practically, you kind of have to do that.
I mean, I would think that that's easier. Especially
yeah.
for something like this where you're not going to like a bunch of locations. You're basically in one location.
Yeah.
You can't do this on a Marvel film because you're globetrotting. Like you're all over the place.
Yeah.
So you have to shoot this stuff when you're here and this stuff there. And it doesn't matter when it happens in the movie.
For the record, to this point, watching the movie, the first time I watched it, it's more or less the same as watching the other movies with you. It's more or less getting to know characters and there's this awesome line in The Office that I think of all the time, and it's Erin, who's the very young, very naive receptionist, and she talks about watching movies with her partner Gabe. And she's like, Gabe always likes to watch horror movies. I don't really like them. Well, I like the beginning when it's all about a nice, happy family, but I don't like what happens to them. And or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what I think of every time I think of the beginning of all of these movies. And so I'm sitting, and to this point, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is routine. This is the young, beautiful people getting to rekindling whatever. And then it gets so fucking far off the rails. This was really like, this was, you're used to, you know, getting used to temperature in your parents' pool, and then you ice, you know, you do like one of those ice baths, and it's shocking.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good way to put it. We cut to our first night. Mia is now losing it, screaming about the smell, screaming about, I got to get out of here. Olivia, I believe, is a nurse, they say. And so she uses, she gives her like a shot of something to kind of calm her down. But this is where the hypodermic needle is introduced. I'm just mentioning these things because they have payoffs later.
Every single one of them, right? So what is that? Nail gun, hypodermic needle.
Yeah. Necklace. Yeah, those are the big ones.
Demon.
There is a dog with them. It's
Grandpa.
Yeah, named Grandpa.
Excellent name for a dog.
Amazing.
Coming from somebody who named his dog Buddy because I'm a lazy sack of shit, Grandpa's a good dog name.
Grandpa is the one who finds the cellar door hidden under the rug. And whenever they pull that rug away, and there's the cellar door that we all know and love, it's got a sliding lock already built into it.
Yeah.
And there is a blood trail that is, I mean, stained the wood beneath it, leading to that door.
Harriet's down there.
Henrietta. Her name is Henrietta. You do it every time.
All right. What I was going to say, I was going to take it again, but I do want the audience to know this. So in Evil Dead 2, the old woman, the man on the radio, or the man on the recording's wife, who has been killed, and he couldn't dismember her, so he just buries her whole in the fruit cellar. Her name is
Henrietta.
And I always say Harriet every time. I get her name wrong every fucking time. So her name is
Henrietta.
And she's down there in this remake.
Okay. That's headcanon for me now.
It was supposed to just be a simple joke, but I can't get the fucking name right. And that's funnier to me.
Amazing. They do the thing that we always do in these movies. They go down in the cellar.
Yeah.
They find a bunch of dead cats that are strung up on the ceiling down there. And this is the part that I absolutely hate, because David walks over to this column that clearly something has been burned up against.
Right.
And he says, something burned here. And when he reaches out and he touches it, we get a flash, a very quick flash. It lasts less than a second, but it is a flash to the girl burning, tied to that pole from less than 10 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. I don't need that. As someone who's watching the movie, I don't need that flash to a thing that happened less than 10 minutes ago.
Well, see, when we were watching it and he said something burned here, I was like, well, what was it? Because I didn't know that was the same cabin. You know, it's for people like me. It's not for people like you who keep track and are smart and watch movies. It's for people like me. The only thing I'm supposed to be watching with my attention span is clips, not full episodes, clips of SpongeBob. That's all I have the time for anymore.
That's what you're watching during the movie. Every 10 seconds you look down and you're like, yeah, Nosferatu.
Yeah, Bubble Bass. The pickles are under the tongue.
He's never going to get that boating license.
I can totally respect that. That is annoying. So, okay, the two Derek's pet peeves, or the DPPs that we have so far on the Third Channel podcast, are you don't like when people turn the TV on and it's immediately to the news clip of the situation that they need to have the exposition for. Mm-hmm. You don't like getting exposition from a coincidental newscast. Mm-hmm. And then you also don't like flashbacks to something that are within the same movie. Like, now,
moments ago.
Okay, so like if it's towards the end of the movie, same thing, but it's towards the end of the movie, they discover the pillar. And then you get a flashback to the very beginning of the movie, like 80 minutes.
That would be okay.
Okay, but it's the fact that it's 10 minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
It is. Yeah, if this was, spread it out like that, I'm a little more forgiving. Okay. It's whenever it is like, no, we just saw that.
Because I typically don't care for a flashback at all. I wouldn't call it a pet peeve, but it's always like, I don't think you need that. I think if you can establish the geometry of the space well enough, you can just recognize the space. Mm-hmm. But I also understand that this is a basement.
Yeah.
It's a basement in a cabin. That might be a little difficult to do, but I didn't notice that. I also was probably watching SpongeBob, so it's okay. It's all right.
This is where they find the shotgun and a square shape that's wrapped in black plastic and barbed wire.
Yeah.
It's roughly the size of like I don't know, maybe a dictionary,
like
or
an encyclopedia.
A
thesaurus.
like that. Yeah. And they take those and they take them back upstairs, and there's this great one take shot where it's the book. We know it's the book.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a bit. The book is sitting really close to the camera and in the foreground, and Eric is sitting behind it. He's just kind of staring at it. And the shot like starts on the right-hand side of the cabin, and it is this one long take where it goes all the way around, and it shows all of our main characters and what they're doing, kind of their reactions to what they just saw down there. Mm-hmm. Not a long shot, not a long take, but just I love oneers, and it's just like the one little,
It's also good to establish this is where our movie's going to take place. This is the very first tribulation that these guys have gone through. The first suffering that they've gone through is a disgusting smell and an awful visual. Where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? Mm-hmm. I think the fact that the smell being something that we immediately write off as our main character being, in these withdrawals. And then it's like, oh no, that was real. That was something disturbing and disgusting. And then they're all still just like, no, we're staying here. It's like when you got here, it was broken in. There are dead cats by the dozen in a basement where something was burnt. And now you find a trash bag wrapped book with barbed wire. Get back in your car.
Yeah, it is. And we talked about this with the original Evil Dead is that those are the warning signs that our heroes ignore.
Well, and they
how
have
we get
to.
here.
And I gotta remind myself of this rule of horror movies is that the reason they don't behave like people behave is because when they do, the movie doesn't happen.
Right.
So we like this movie. So we're glad that they are insufferable idiots. Just real pieces of shit.
Our next introduction there is the electric knife.
Yes.
Natalie is carving up, I don't know, some kind of meat.
It almost looks like a Wellington.
Uh-huh.
And I might be wrong, but I'm fairly certain Wellingtons are very difficult to cook. Yeah. So
I'm the last person to be able to spot a cut of meat. I don't know what that is.
She's cutting into a bowl of cereal.
I don't think that's what it was at all. That's not my recollection.
But how good is cereal?
I was distracted by that flashback of the girl on fire. Eric then starts snipping the barbed wire off of this book.
Yes.
And he starts, again, it doesn't look like the Necronomicon from any of the previous versions. This one is very much still wrapped in human skin, presumably written in human blood. And
we would assume.
There's no voiceover to tell us that.
They wouldn't guess that, but we know.
We know. He gets a paper cut flipping through it.
Yeah.
And I thought, in my recollection, it's like the blood got sucked into the book, but that doesn't happen.
No, you are thinking of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Tom Riddle's diary, Dead by Dawn.
This version of the book is interesting because it's like it's an old book is what it looks like. It's written in a language that we don't understand, but then written on top of that is clearly like, and as we've seen from the opening scene, it's not the first time that someone has opened this book and read from it. And there are all sorts of things like, don't open this, don't read it. It was wrapped in plastic and barbed wire for a reason. Why are you touching it?
Right.
And Eric not only does all of that and goes past it, he finds like a spot in the pages where it's like, oh, something's been like scribbled out here. Well, what if there's still an indentation for it. Well, I'll just put a piece of paper and I'll do that little like rubbing thing.
An etching.
Etching, thank you. And then he reads those words.
Like an asshole. But then we get the classic camera movement.
Yes.
We get the classic
Shaky
rushing towards that cabin. And that was the most familiar thing so far.
Mm-hmm. And it's done far more sophisticated now. And so like the camera's on like a rig on cables that are like strung up through the woods. And so they're able to just like, and a cameraman's up there and they just shoot that down on these wires and he's able to move the camera back and forth to give it that kind of, ghostly, force feeling that we're used to.
And I like that. I would say, I think it would have been better if guys had just strapped a camera to a hunk of wood and ran with it.
Yeah, probably.
That would feel right at home.
A lot cheaper as well.
Yeah.
And then
Fetty, you could have just used some guys. You could have used the guy that survived 2 plane crashes. He survived 2 plane crashes. You think he can't run with a camera?
I don't know what he's capable of.
And his kid. Get those guys.
Yeah, get him in there.
Real The Evil Dead style. Who do we have standing around? This plane crash guy and my son. You guys are doing the evil force camera.
Yeah, I don't think there's any like fake shimps in this one at all.
Oh, that's a sad.
The camera, buzzes through, and Mia is like walking around in a circle outside, and it smashes into her face, much like it has done to Ash several times.
It unfortunately then does not lift her bodily into the air, where she does the world's craziest facial acting.
No, it just causes her to vomit.
Yeah,
and then she is very much like, "Hey, I got to get out of here."
Yeah.
And they are like, "No, you're not going to do that. We're here for the long haul. We're going to get you clean." She breaks the necklace and kind of throws it at David. And while he's picking that up, she steals the keys, hops in the car, and tries to get out of there.
This is where we're going to reinstitute this trigger warning because this movie franchise deals with this stuff a lot. Where she is driving and unfortunately crashes the car. She kind of falls into like sort of still water, and gets up and tries to escape, kind of running into brambles that spring to life and kind of, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Ensnare?
Yeah, that's a good one. They ensnare her, and then a bit of a like a doppelganger situation. It's like an evil reflection of Mia.
Yeah.
Is like present out there, and it has the Sith Revenge of the Sith eyes.
Yeah, it follows her from the mud of this bog that she crashes in. That's actually played by her stunt double.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken. I'll also mention whenever she falls into that thicket of vines and everything else, they do another vertigo zoom as she's going in there. Again, just to kind of create this disorienting kind of feeling. And then when evil Mia is there, it does it again.
Yeah. Well, and this like almost like the Venom symbiote, like this nasty living hunk of vine. It like it doesn't have it's not like lashed to a tree or something. It has like a start point and an end point. It's like a serpent, and it snakes its way into
very phallic.
Yes.
And it is something that it was a physical prop that I believe they puppeted and then erased all the, wires.
That's cool and also crazy because it goes, we gave a trigger warning. It goes right up in her, and it's horrific, and her performance is great. Because it's like she screams herself almost silent. And so that's this scene. It's the prerequisite. We're 3 out of 4 of these fucking movies where somebody gets, absolutely like violated by fucking evil fauna.
It is
Flora. I always get those backwards.
It's like in ways I don't know if it's better or worse than what we see in The Evil Dead.
This is worse.
This is worse to you?
This is worse.
Okay.
The original is just performance.
Yeah.
And performance can suggest a lot, and those suggestions can be very bad. This has the performance because let's say this if we haven't. She's tremendous.
Yes.
She's great. Every moment that she's on screen, she's the thing that you're looking at.
Absolutely.
But this is like her performance is great, the prop is great, and it all leads to a truly horrific and like disturbing sequence.
Honestly, there's not a whole lot more to say about that scene, thankfully.
Yeah.
Because then we are back at the cabin, and that is where actually the clip that we played earlier, that's where this lands, is David goes in to console her and basically say like, hey, you've been out in these woods and you need to get cleaned off. And the way that she delivers those lines, it is like, something has obviously happened to her. We as the audience know that. But she's trying to convey that to David and to the rest of this group, and they're just not believing her, still thinking that she's trying everything she can to get back.
And to their credit, that makes sense. It makes sense to believe that. It makes sense to be worried about that, especially because they set another setup payoff. They set up the fact that she's going to do whatever it takes. She's going to say whatever. So now that she's saying these bombastic, ridiculous things and is like sweating and has like really dark bags under her eyes and whatnot, it's like, well, yeah, that's the assumption that you're going to make.
She seems truly terrified. We've said it, but the stilted way that dialogue comes out, her nostrils are flared, her eyes are wide, and she's doing everything she can to get, him to understand. Yeah. And he is like, nope, and closes the door on her. And then we get this shot of like evil Mia in the mirror, and she's just drooling blood. And it's like, oh no, we know that, that's what's happening. Like the evil is in here with us. It just happens to be in Mia. Yeah. And I believe the next shot is Eric looking through the book, and the illustrations in the book kind of match the shot that we just saw of evil Mia drooling the blood. Yeah. And then
there's even
he's flipping through.
There's even a page in the book that's like somebody getting, assaulted by a fucking tree.
Strung up by vines. And
Yeah.
yes. And so that is another theme that kind of runs through this whole movie from here on out is every major like bad thing that happens, there is a version of that happening in this book.
Yeah.
There's some sort of illustration to depict that. David is then, he kind of sets out to dispose of all the dead cats and things that are, in the cellar. And this is where he takes them out to the woodshed and he finds this trail of blood that leads down the hill and around. And there's like a foxhole, like a fox den. And the dog, Grandpa, is in there. So he goes back into the woodshed and there's like a hole through the floor there. And he finds the dead and bloody body of this dog. And that's another setup for a set piece later.
Yeah.
But it gives this flash whenever he's looking at the dog and he's trying to figure out what's going on. He sees a bloody hammer on the ground, much like, say, in Evil Dead 2, whenever Annie sees the bloody chainsaw on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, rightfully assumes that Ash, the psycho man, has murdered her family.
But in this case, he gets a flash of Mia screaming and smashing, presumably the dog. I don't know if that actually happened or if that's just like him piecing things together. It's never explained whether she killed the dog or not.
I mean, she would kind of have to have.
I guess. Yeah. And then this is where things really start going off the rails.
In a really good SFX shot.
Yeah.
He goes storming into the house and everyone's trying to get him, he is the least popular person in this cabin. And one of them is a drug addict. And like, they hate this dude. And he goes barging into the room that she's in and she's taking a shower. And what we see is her sitting there and she's doing what I'm going to call the twitch, which is the whole movie, all of the deadites. And they make like a noise. And when they do, their jaw, like from the jaw, they tilt their head to the left like a tick. Like, and they do it at the same time. I wish y'all could see me. Yeah. I'm doing such a good impression of this. But they do this, and she's standing in the bath, which way more plumbing than
usable plumbing in this cabin.
The original movie had at its disposal. But she's standing there, and it's like this little not portable, but it's like an individual water heater. And she has turned the heat up on the water so much that the water heater bursts into flames. So like the water is super hot. And her skin is like Freddy Krueger blistering, like searing off. And so eventually he gets the door open and he gets her out because he's going in there to yell at her for killing the dog, presumably. And then he gets her out of the tub.
But it's all the blisters like bursting on her her neck and face. It is beyond burnt. She has like cooked herself. And so he immediately tries to rush her away.
And in another expectation subversion, he is unable to drive her away because where it used to be is, the blown out bridge. We've talked about that in every movie that it's in. It's a wonderful set piece typically. But in this one, it is water, like a river dam's burst of rushing water. So
that's all real. That's real water. So whenever they were shooting in that area, they had found this bridge that apparently, I don't even know if it was a bridge or if it was a path, but like parts of the year, it floods. And so they went back whenever it was like during the rainy season and got that shot of it flooded out like that just so they could do it practically.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it looks great.
Yeah, it does.
It's not as striking, obviously,
but it makes more sense. Because why would there be this bridge that like is over a chasm to get to a cabin?
Yeah, true. And we don't see them come across a bridge in the beginning. So it's not like that's not a setup payoff for that.
Yeah.
The other thing is Eric finds an illustration of a person with pouring boiling water over themselves in the book shortly after that as well.
Right. And and right here is the precipice. Right here, it goes from being, it's the Scooby-Doo mystery moment. It's the mask gets pulled off. Is they find out that this is actually something fucked and terribly wrong, because they're all sitting around and it's the shock. It's the pain. Like, why the fuck would she do that to herself? Only for her to come stumbling down the hallway with the shotgun, which is again another subversion because now the Deadite has the gun.
Yeah.
And
And it's another one of those things of like, we know more than they do in this moment of just like, ooh, this is going to get real bad.
Yes, it is going to be terrible. And it is immediately.
Yeah. She has the gun. She points it, slowly, like it creeps up.
Unhuman. It's bizarre how robotic. And I wonder if they mess with like the frames for the footage at all, or if it's just really good physical acting, because it feels like it's unnatural.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah, it almost feels, like when you shoot something in reverse and then reverse that, or, you shoot it with her moving backwards and then play it in reverse. So
And they're still trying their hardest to blame this on her being a drug addict. They're like, Mia, please. Oh my God. David's like, please put the gun down. It's like, bro, no, this is a leap too far.
Yeah. If there was ever a moment, this is the one. She shoots out the front window of the cabin, and then we cut to the evil force cam again, like we've seen before, very quickly approaching the front of the cabin, like a storm is kind of, flashes of lightning happening. That front door bursts open, and the wind is just howling through this house, and she's screaming, and it then is punctuated by her like voice, and it kind of it's her voice and then kind of warped, doubled over that of like, you're all going to die tonight, and then she like passes. Does she drop out of frame at that point? I can't remember.
Because then when
But it's very unnatural.
when they go to check on her, and she leaps forward onto her
To Olivia.
yes, and she vomits in buckets of blood.
It is chunky.
It is disgusting.
Yeah. It's and all of that was, practically done. It's the thing that Mia talks about, or not Mia, that Jane talks about being like, of all the things that she had to do in this movie physically and to any other actor and everything else, she was like, that's the one I feel the worst about, because I was having to do that to, that actress.
Yeah, you got to throw up right in her mouth. It's the craft, method acting, mouth puking. You do what you can. You do what you can to get the next job.
Yeah, and she got it.
Yeah.
They kick her into the cellar.
But that's the funny part. They literally kick her body down the steps and into the cellar.
And Eric like throws it down and locks it. But they do that thing where like he has to hop on top of the door, and she's, pushing up against it. And Natalie says a line that Shelley says in The Evil Dead, which is what happened to her eyes. Because her eyes had then changed to the Sith Lord eyes.
Yeah. It wasn't a secret that the Jedi would tell her. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the attempt.
Cut it
all. Olivia then goes to the bathroom to try and clean up.
Yeah.
And this, the like practical effect that's going on here is something else. Like from here on out, it is just, it's nonstop.
It is. Okay, so she is in the bathroom sink.
Also, pretty much from here on out, the movie plays out almost in real time.
Yeah.
There's no like jumping ahead of like,
No.
oh yeah, a couple hours from now. It's like, no, this is just.
Only until like towards the end of the movie does that happen again.
Yeah, it might jump a little bit there.
But this is, it's everyone is reacting to everything in real time. This is the part of this movie that it was such an effort the first time watching it to like, I don't want to sound like a baby, but it was like, I'm trying to keep my eyes open. I'm trying not to cower behind my hands, because this is the worst thing I'd ever experienced up to this point. And it's still up. It's still up there. It's still fucking gross,
effective, man.
Yeah.
She goes in the bathroom. She's washing up, and they do this thing where like she opens the medicine cabinet because she's looking for like painkillers or she's looking for something to sedate Mia. And whenever she's fiddling with that, the cabinet closes slowly, and you get this reflection of her, but like her lower jaw has basically been carved away. And then the glass shatters, and she, is freaked out by that, tries to leave the bathroom, and is like stuck in place. We assume gets either forced back in or goes back into the bathroom.
Right.
Eric hears that commotion, goes in there and opens the door.
This is the hardest part for me is the noise. It's the sound
yeah.
design because it is truly cutting meat. That's the only way to describe it is it's a semi-elastic biological shredding sound.
Mm-hmm.
And he is calling her name and he's like, well, you know, are you all right? He clicks the lights on. She's in the tub, kind of hunched over.
And whenever he clicks the light on, there's like, it flickers because there's like water because it's storming outside. And so I guess it's leaking because there's water dripping down onto that bulb, kind of in the way that the light bulb fills with blood in The Evil Dead.
Okay.
Just
to
to kind of like,
yeah.
But, and then he sees her hunched over in the shower.
Yeah. And he calls out her name. She turns around and is carved basically her entire cheek off.
Yeah.
Like
With a giant shard of that mirror.
yeah, like one of those Irish smiles. Like the Joker. Like
Yeah.
Heath Ledger's Joker, dude. She's cut her. You can see her teeth through the cheek, what was there. And he's like, oh, God, oh, Jesus. And he's backing away. And then he fucking banana peel, like a Charlie Chaplin bit. He banana peel slips on her cheek skin that's laying on the floor. That is the most vomit-inducing, disgusting thing ever.
That's
and
awful.
it's like, you could, if you look at that on paper, that's funny.
Yeah.
He slips backwards on her cheek meat. That's funny.
Okay, so that's the thing. Rewatching this over the years is that I always think of it as like, yeah, this is the like disgusting, gory, bloody version of the Evil Dead. This is what they were trying to do with the original, and they just couldn't. And then you watch it, and then it's just like, oh no, but they still do like kind of some pratfalls here and there.
Yeah.
Like the vomiting onto Olivia's face is like very cartoony. It's over the
still
top.
over the top. Speaking of over the top, she then gets on top of him.
Yes.
And then this is what I mean about that physical performance where it's like there's something wrong is she gets on top of him and she grabs the needle.
First she stabs him in
The shoulder meat. Yeah.
With the shard that she was just cutting her face off with.
Which, by the way, that's mixing blood. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But then she grabs this needle. Sharing needles, also a bad idea.
This is the part that I have the hardest time watching.
And she like it's like an action figure, like an old Kenner toy that you would squeeze the legs of and it would chop. It's like Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
And she just stabs him in the face with this fucking needle.
And it's like broken through his glasses and just in his eye over and over and over again.
And in his slipping backwards, the tank of the toilet falls off and shatters.
Yeah.
And so in an effort to keep in mind, this is the woman that he loves. And so he shoves her off of himself, grabs a piece of the toilet tank and crushes her head with it.
Yeah.
And it's like immediately that you go from there is any room for misunderstanding to there is no more room. It is, you can blame this on drugs, you can blame this on whatever and try to stretch the imagination. And now it's, oh no, this is like a virus. And I think they hypothesize.
In a second, yeah, David does try to rationalize it that way. The part that I can, like the eye stabbing is bad.
It's him pulling the needle out of his eye skin.
Reaching into that like loose skin under your eye.
Yeah.
And pulling the needle, just the needle tip. But it's probably an inch and a half
It's about
out from under his eye. Like it doesn't, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. I pretty much have to look away.
The thing that disturbs me about it is his glasses seem to have been punctured as well.
Yeah.
Which means it went into his eye at some point. Or like at least near the ocular nerve. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really fucked up sequence in what is just a continuing smorgasbord of fucked up sequences. Because she's dead. Eric comes out to basically explain that.
Well, first David takes him out to the
Orc shed.
and they like patch him up with duct tape because
Yeah.
that's what they have on hand.
Yeah.
And David sends Natalie back into the house because it's like, oh, he's losing a lot of blood. This is a line that I think is weird, and maybe it makes sense to somebody who knows more about whatever. He's like, he's losing a lot of blood. He needs water and sugar. He specifically says he needs water and sugar.
So what it is that Eric has become the giant cockroach monster from the original Men in Black.
You got to that joke like the fraction of the second before I did.
Yeah.
Because whenever I said it the second time, I was like, oh, just like, never mind.
I need sugar water.
So she goes inside. But that also, Eric basically confesses to David of like, I think I did this.
Yeah.
I read from that book. There was some witchcraft going on. I shouldn't have done it. And I don't know what we're going to do to get out of here, man. But I don't think it's just her being, an addict. I think this is not withdrawal symptoms. This is bad.
Yeah. This is black magic voodoo shit. And I did it to y'all. My bad.
Then we follow Natalie into the cabin, into the kitchen. And again, we get this awesome one-take shot of she's in the kitchen, she hears a sound, and we turn away from her and pan around the whole cabin again, and we see that the cellar door is wide open. Mm-hmm. No explanation as to how it's unlocked.
Mm-hmm. Which is, for the record, in this movie, because they fuck with the cabin door a lot in this series, but in this, or the cellar door, but in this one, because of its tone and general gore and no idea what the fuck's going to happen next-ness, it being wide open is so petrifying.
Yeah,
It's
because
terrifying.
you don't know where she is. And so it continues around. You see just the dark hallway leading to the back of the cabin. It continues around and then follows it shows Natalie again. And then you hear Mia's voice, just her normal calling out for help. Mm-hmm. And it follows Natalie across to the cellar door. And then we finally cut that shot. Not the most involved oneer, but I just think it's impressive anytime I see it. Because it's one that doesn't really draw attention to itself.
This is both the most impressive visual effect and also the thing I have to look away for. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I've mentioned in this show before that I'm like desensitized, that I, at this point, can see anything. It takes a lot to get to me. Mm-hmm. This, even still, is so fucking gross. Basically, she does the thing. The Deadites tend to taunt victims in a lot of ways, both like, I'm going to tear your soul out of your body. I'm going to kill you like I killed XYZ. But also some of it's kind of weirdly sexual. Mm-hmm. And in this moment that it plays a lot with that.
It really gets on that, yeah.
It's like she goes to like what looks to be to kind of, for lack of better terms, kind of go down on this Natalie. And
in the commentary, that's what they kind of, because you don't get to that point in the movie, but they do say of like, that's what we were getting at.
It's implied.
Yeah.
And then Natalie is revealed to have had a box cutter that she brandishes. And can you explain this? Because I don't want to. It's making my cheek. Okay, all right, guys.
Man, this is the moment.
Yeah, audience of the Third Channel podcast, I have to tell you guys about cheek tingles. Since I was a kid, anytime I had to look at or see, if I saw or on myself or others, any injuries that would lead to like, really bad like trauma, like a broken bone or something, or blood, and please reach out to us and let us know if you have this also. When I see this stuff, my butt cheeks tingle.
Both of them?
Both of them. And it's like a bad tingle, like I get discomforted. So I call it the cheek tingles. And this is the most cheek tingliest motherfucking cheek tingle I've ever experienced. So you have to say it. I can't say it.
All right. They are on the staircase. Mia crawls up between Natalie's legs. She's brandishing the box cutter. Mm-hmm. And Mia at first, like, you think, oh, well, yeah, that's a weapon that she's got right in her face. What is she going to do? And instead, Mia takes the box cutter from her and licks the blade. And it goes...
My cheeks, they're tingling.
It slices her tongue
in half
to where it's like a snake tongue.
Yeah.
And again, all practical. They really sliced her tongue.
Shut the fuck up.
No, all practical. She licks like a fake blade at first, and then they cut. And then whenever it comes back, the tongue is splitting. And that is like an animatronic to where you could get that little bit of movement.
That's amazing.
It is awful to see.
It is disgusting. It's so disgusting. And they knew. Because it takes a long time. They take their time with that shit. They knew that was good.
She then, Mia continues to crawl up Natalie's body. And she says some vile thing to her.
Yeah,
and then forces her pronged tongue into Natalie's mouth.
Yeah.
And I assume...
Natalie's like choking on blood. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I assume that this is part of what causes Natalie to become possessed. At some point, Mia also bites
her
Natalie's hand, like between the thumb and forefinger there.
Yeah.
That's when, Natalie's freaking out. So David comes back into the house, sees what's happening, pulls Natalie out of there. And I'm not going to repeat what Mia says. It's a lot of like
hint.
Exorcist level, your mother sucks, and those sorts of things.
I'll give you a hint. She says to her, well, the demon-possessed body of Mia says to her brother David what Betty from Freddy Got Fingered says to Gordy at the end of the movie that she'd like to do all day long instead of taking his jewels. If you know what I mean, great. If you don't, doesn't matter. Let's move past it.
Man, that's probably like 6 people.
Yeah. And none of those people are, by the way, Tom Green. He has no idea what I'm talking about.
David pulls Natalie out of there, slams it shut, and then he chains the door of the cellar down in more of how we know it from
like nails it shut with the nail gun and then wraps the chains around. Yeah.
And it's very much in a, like a Raimi montage of like shot,
boom,
shot.
Chunk, chunk, chunk.
Yeah.
Chains racking. Yeah. It's very, 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 like I said, it is so similar. You think, oh, that's like, but not, oh, that is, which is good.
Eric is trying to burn the book.
Yes.
It does not work.
No.
He's thinking that might be it. So then he reads more of the book and he comes across this passage for the Taker of Souls. It says, once he feeds on 5 souls, the sky will bleed again and the abomination will rise from hell.
Which is new. This is all new for this movie. This is not based on anything from before. And it's a good twist.
And I don't know when we were going to reveal this, but this might as well be. It'll give people a couple weeks. This is the part that I find so funny, that this movie has this little thing of like, once he feeds on 5 souls, the fact that it's 5 souls specifically. And in the same year, if I'm not mistaken, Cabin in the Woods comes out.
Right.
And that also features a similar thing.
Yeah.
So I'll reveal it now if we haven't already. But our palate cleanser, our bridge between 2 franchises this go around.
Yeah, once we finish with Evil Dead,
is going to be Cabin in the Woods.
Because the amount of times we've had to say a fucking cabin in the woods, it just felt like the perfect next chapter.
Absolutely. Natalie then washes off the bite that Mia gave her in the sink.
And in yet another disgusting phobic ridden.
Oh my God. This is the one that does for me. It's the trypophobia. So I don't get it on my cheeks.
No.
Whenever I see like specific, what's funny is over the weekend, I just had a conversation with a group of friends of mine when we went to Universal. We were talking about phobias and I got to talking about trypophobia, which for listeners who don't know what that is, look it up.
No. Don't do that to them. Because then it has those image searches. It's a fear of a bunch of little holes all next to each other.
Right.
Right.
That's putting it simply. And they're like, I don't know how to explain it better than that because it affects different people in different ways.
If you Google image search this and you do have it, you're fucking yourself.
You will immediately know that you have it because you will get a feeling. And so there are certain images.
Maybe in your cheeks.
There are certain things that I see where it's that like creeping flesh, like tingles, but it's like up the right side of my body. And that is how it happens. And that is what happens whenever I look at the like pustules of blood and whatever
it's like
that's
black,
coming out of her.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's like black ichor that has like kind of congealed into these little pods that pop out of the bite mark holes. It really is gross. And then in what is a glaring touch up of a special effect. I think it was the only special effect throughout the movie that I didn't really buy. It was the only one where I was like, okay, that's a special effect. And now it wasn't bad. It didn't take me out of it, but it was like, oh, that's a special effect. And it was her hand and her forearm kind of transitions into like a rot.
It's this slow, kind of creeping, like looks like rot under the skin or something. And this is also where David, we had just cut from David talking to Eric about this and them trying to rationalize it still. David doesn't want to believe. And so he's like, well, what if the cats were diseased and that got into Mia and then, that got into, it spread to Olivia and like that's what's causing this.
Right.
And so they're still trying to play with that. Like we, the audience, know that that's clearly not it.
The audience and Eric also, because Eric's like, no, I mean, literally pictures of everything that's happening is in this fucking book.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they, in what is probably my favorite callback to any of the originals, is her arm has like rotten up to the elbow and she's slumped and she's like, give me back my arm. And it's just like, that's funny, but your delivery is not as wonderful as give me back my arm.
This is where we get the return of the electric knife.
Yeah, the electric saw, yeah.
As she has to
cut her fucking arm off.
Hack her arm off,
From like the bicep.
It's a lot. And again, all practical there. Like that is her hand for as long as it can, and her arm as long as it can be. And then it is a like animatronic to where they can get it to move and stuff and react, and they cut it off.
Well, and then you've got...
And you get the reaction shots of all the blood.
Well, always.
All over her face.
And then you've got the two men hear the commotion, burst inside, and in a truly another...
And her blood like splashes onto like an outlet on the wall and like short circuits all the electricity in the house. So that's what causes them to come running.
And her fucking arm is like by a shred hanging. And she's like, I got it off. I got it off. And it falls onto the ground. Hopefully my mouth noise was gross enough for the audience at home, but
probably
the scene's grosser, I promise. But yeah, it falls off, flops to the floor. And I think this is when David's like, no, fuck, he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he and Eric go back to the book, and Eric says, well, there's only 3 ways that you can end this. And that is through live burial, bodily dismemberment, which is what was given in the original, and purification by fire. So we've seen purification by fire and how that works at the beginning of this movie.
Purification by fire, and then also head blow off with shotgunning.
Well, yeah, that's in the fine print.
It's the asterisk in Sumerian.
Yeah. They knew what a shotgun was.
Yeah.
And because Ash was there in 13 AD. Yeah. We got it.
Yeah, Sumeria, which is England. Let's move past it. That doesn't matter.
While they're trying to figure out their game plan here, you hear the ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk of a nail gun.
Yes.
As Natalie comes, down the hallway into the living room and has shot many a nail into her face.
I'd say a baker's dozen. No, it's probably like 4. It's gross.
And then turns that nail gun on both Eric and David and starts just firing nails across the room at them.
And David gets like 1 or 2 in his leg.
Yeah, he gets a couple in his leg.
And then fucking Eric gets like 4 in his arm and like his face.
He's like hiding behind the couch at one point, and then she comes and like walks around that. And they do this thing where like he's trying to protect himself. And so he like lifts his hand up in front of his chest where she's firing, and then it nails his hand to his chest.
Yeah.
And
it's fucking foul.
David tackles her. And he like, is trying to catch his breath. You see like the shot of her like laying on the ground. It cuts back to his reaction. And then we cut back to his view again, and she's gone just immediately. And he's like, it's like, oh my God, where could she have gone that quickly? And Eric points out, get that before she does. Mm-hmm. And we cut to the shotgun leaned up against the wall.
Yeah.
And so David's leg has been shot with these nails. And so he's doing the slow Ash crawl across the floor to the shotgun, but they've at least given a good enough reason as he has been shot with a bunch of nails.
Yes.
But then she comes in and uses the crowbar that we saw earlier that was used to break the door open.
Yeah.
Much like a fire poker, to beat David at first. And Eric, I believe, gets her attention by shooting her with the remainder of the nails in the nail gun. And then she goes over and...
It's fucked up. It's really, really hard to watch.
The one that I can't is he puts his hand up again to protect himself.
Yeah.
And she swings that crowbar and it like splits his hand between like his middle finger and his ring finger, like down about halfway through the hand itself. Ugh, just the thought.
Yeah. And like his head is all like almost dented.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it.
Yeah, that's
and
gross.
she's raising it to get the kill shot on him. And David blows her hand off with the shotgun. So now she is armless.
Yes.
And basically, I assume doing the Deadite change back into normal trickery, crawls across to him and dies in his lap, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think she ever really comes back into play. So I guess she does die in that moment.
I guess that kind of is body dismemberment. You've blown both of her arms off.
Oh, true.
Yeah, the Deadite's just like, this one, it's, what am I going to do? Slap him with my shoulder blades? He gives up.
This next part is, it's different depending on if you're watching the theatrical cut or the unrated cut. So in the unrated cut, which is what we watched the other day, it shows him burn Olivia's body like in the shower.
Right.
And then he binds and cuts up Natalie with a chainsaw in the work shed. So again, another callback to the Evil Dead. Those are not shown in the theatrical cut. In the theatrical cut, all it is like she dies and then he's like, I'm going to burn the cabin down. So he's dousing everything with gasoline.
Gotcha.
And he goes to, because he's taken Eric outside, he's leaned him up against like the Jeep where they're going to escape from. And as he's about to, he has his lighter out, he, lights it. He's about to toss it down onto the cellar door. Mia begins singing the lullaby that their mother sang to them and that she had referenced earlier. And it's in that moment that David is like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And like lightning strikes this tree outside and it catches on fire. So it's like almost, it's getting like biblical at this point. There's a burning bush. And then we get another Raimi build montage. And we don't know exactly what he's building at this point.
It's like two syringes taped together with like a fucking car battery.
Yeah. And then he goes back to the cellar. And as he's going down, there's this awesome shot where like he's way in the background coming down the stairs and his flashlight kind of flashes across and you see the box cutter sitting on like a shelf. And then his light goes away and then as it comes back, it's gone.
Right.
And so he's down in the cellar. He goes through into the second room and he's hearing voices, male voices, female voices, different people that he doesn't necessarily know.
Yeah.
But he's hearing voices. The second room is flooded now, like it was in, I believe, in The Evil Dead. And you get a jump scare of Mia. He, turns the flashlight around and catches her there, and then she slides across the room at him. And so she attacks him, and basically she nearly drowns David in this like underground well that's back there that I guess is what's flooded this place. And she stops at some point. Whenever David comes up, it's revealed that Eric has knocked her out, but then he's also been stabbed in the gut by the box cutter.
Yeah, Eric is very much the Ash in this movie, only in the sense of this dude read the book, and as a result of that, he cannot catch a fucking break.
Yeah.
Beaten, nailed, stabbed. This dude has been literally stabbed in the fucking eyeball with a needle. I feel so bad for him.
Yeah. No, he gets it the worst.
Yeah.
But he is the one that opened that book and read from it.
So they take her unconscious form upstairs.
Well, David does.
Yes.
Because Eric at that point dies in David's arms and he like gently sets him down into the water.
Yeah.
And takes Mia
Which is a
outside.
shitty thing to do to your friend. Because it's like, well, you're dead. Here you go. Here's some still cabin basement water.
Yeah.
To bloat in. But
he sedates Mia just in case.
Yes. And then covers her face in plastic.
Yeah.
And this is actually a genius idea. I love the writing of this to get around the rules of what the movie is established. He has to bury her alive. And so he begins to, she wakes up, she does the fake I'm alive thing, pleads with him, no, you don't have to do this. And then the facade breaks and it's, your mother sucks cocks in hell. And he buries her. All the work that we did to not say.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
I like that because you still get the, like, a similar thing like you get in the original where Linda's head is she's been decapitated and she's talking to Ash. So you get that same image without having to actually literally decapitate Mia in this.
Yeah. And so he buries her alive, waits for the time for her to die, digs her back up, and then the thing that he was contrapting
Is like
resuscitates her, brings her back to life.
Defibrillator.
And when she comes back, it is clear that she's no longer possessed.
Yeah, she's been, and that is because more or less, like from the commentary, they kind of explain because he buries her and then he's hunched over the grave and he like apologizes, but he apologizes not just for like what's happened today, but he's apologizing to Mia for not being there for her in her time of need before this.
Right.
Not being there whenever their mother died, not being there whenever she got into drugs, not being there to help her.
Yeah.
And uses the defibrillator that he made himself.
Yeah, because everyone can do that.
He was a mechanic. I believe they mentioned that earlier in the film. That's the only bit of like, I guess he might know how to make something.
We're getting
with a car battery.
Very close to like Jason Statham territory with that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's fine. It doesn't take me out of it. It's fine.
And then it's revealed that he thinks that it didn't work, and he turns his back, and then she's there, and she says the line, "Thanks for not leaving me."
Yeah,
which is the payoff from earlier.
So it's like, all right, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's burn this cabin down.
Not much
left.
left.
Get the fuck out. He goes inside
to get the keys.
Surprise!
And he is Eric. He takes one last look at like the pictures on the wall, and it's like this picture of all of them as friends hanging out at this cabin, we assume. And he like takes the picture, and as he turns around, Eric stabs him in the neck with the
box cutter.
Yeah. Well, no, it's the clippers that he uses to open the book.
Oh God!
It's those like snips, those 10 snips.
Ew.
The score, I haven't mentioned this at all. I love the score in this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like piano.
Yeah.
But then whenever big scary moments happen, they incorporate like emergency sirens, like what you'd get for like a tornado or something, into the score. It's amazing.
And then of course he's got the head click thing going.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah, he's great.
It is like his stillness is horrifying.
Yeah.
David gives, he rushes out. He gives Mia the keys and he says, "Go," and he closes the door because he basically knows he's going to bleed out. And so he locks the cabin door, and he collapses. And Eric is coming out slowly toward him, and he has the shotgun. He does this move where like the shotgun is leaned up against like a table that's next to the door, and he like shoulder checks the table and the shotgun falls into his hands. It's this cool little move.
It's very Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says, "Groovy," and he blows his fucking chest open.
No, he shoots the jug of gasoline, and the house is already covered in gasoline, so it just explodes with flame. And this is only in the director's cut as well. Like that scene is longer. In the theatrical cut, it's just short. Like he grabs the gun and he shoots it and it explodes. In the director's cut, you actually push in on David's face as they're all burning, and you see his eyes change to the deadite eyes as he's going up in flames. And then we go to Mia outside, and
with Mia and her 4 friends having all been possessed one by one, that is the 5th soul. I guess through technicality.
In the theatrical cut, because you don't see the eyes change, there's a plot hole.
Yeah.
Like there's not an actual explanation. There wasn't 5 souls claimed.
Yeah.
But it begins raining blood.
It does. And it's awesome because it's like thick. And like that first drip hits her on the face. You're like,
Yeah, she had reached out because the necklace is on the ground.
and here we go. It's a skull. That's my pet peeve. I don't like it when skulls are necklaces. But oh my god, no, leave it in. Leave it in. I said it backwards. Leave it in. I don't like it when skulls are necklaces. You make your skull bones. But yeah, it starts raining blood. She's reaching to get into the Jeep, and it's that trickle, and it's the viscosity of it, and it's like, fuck. Oh no.
Yeah, she's standing there. It drips onto her hand, and then, birthed from the ground in front of her is the abomination.
Which is her doppelganger.
Yes.
Which is a really cool and effective way. Because it's like, is that what it actually looks like? Is that just how she sees it? It doesn't matter. It's creepy.
Yeah, and the way that it's illustrated in the book is like, the body is bursting from the ground with one hand outstretched. That is a reference to the original poster of the Evil Dead, which is an image that doesn't exist in the film, but they wanted to pay homage to that.
And it works.
I will also say that it is reported that the film used 70,000 gallons of blood for this film. Fede Álvarez in an interview has said that they used 50,000 gallons for the final scene alone. And just for comparison, they used 200 to 300 gallons for the original Evil Dead film.
It's like a sort of Metal Gear Solid stealth game finale where she's trying to get away and she's like crawled under the Jeep and whatnot.
Well, she like crawls through the foxhole and into the
work shed,
where she then finds the chainsaw.
Right.
And we get the chainsaw reveal. She also has a moment that's kind of, she needs gas for the chainsaw, and she looks up and there's like gas in a bottle above her, and she shoulder checks the shelf and it falls down and she catches it. It's like they do it like back to back.
That little bit of camp I love, because it is just this break in an otherwise really tense moment.
Yeah.
But those little breaks don't ruin the tension at all, because the second she goes back out, it's like, oh, right. It's literally blood red sky. The ground is soaked. It's all blood red. And there's a giant nude version. Well, it's not giant, but there's a nude version of her chasing her around trying to claim her soul again.
Yeah. And the doppelganger has picked up a machete from the work shed as well. And so they have moved back outside. Mia hides under the Jeep. And then as it approaches, she saws off one of its legs with a chainsaw. And it falls down on the ground, and she's trying to crawl away, and it just lifts the Jeep up and over, and it tilts over onto its side,
smashing her fucking arm.
Pins Mia's hand underneath.
Which it leads to another disgusting, cheek-tingly motherfucking special effect, which is she then has to, like, that one guy whose arm was trapped under a boulder, but she just tears her fucking arm away, and it's like the skin and the meat all rip, and the sound design is excellent and effective, but disgusting, and she gets her arm free, and then in a scene that reminds me kind of in Dead by Dawn, Evil Dead 2, where Ash is being chased by a rubber puppet with a chainsaw, and then he knocks the chainsaw back into and like bisects it. She takes the fucking chainsaw one-handed and bisects this fucking abomination, which then melts back into the ground.
Yeah, and then like when you see it, like her eyes are still blinking, and it just sinks into the bloody ground. And the cabin is still on fire.
Mia stumbles away.
Sun comes up. Music is swelling. Limps off toward the woods.
Kind of hitchhiked.
And that's the mid-credit scenes.
Yeah.
The camera's on like a crane, and it cranes up and then quickly like whip tilts down to the book sitting, and it shows... I think it shows the abomination maybe, but it flips closed, and that's our final shot of it smash cuts again to the title. Then the beginning of the credits go, and it has the big, it's all, it's like fancy credits before they start rolling. And then we get a mid-credit scene. This is only for the director's cut. And it's Mia walking down, the road, and she collapses in the middle of this, forest road. This old truck pulls up, and an old man gets out. And I've always heard rumor that there was an idea to have that be
Ash.
Yeah. To
I'm
find
happy
her.
it wasn't.
And yeah, that would have been a little much. But it's an old man, and he, oh my God, this girl's in danger. He picks her up, puts her in the truck, and then they're driving away, and it pushes in on like super close onto her eyes, and they snap open. But they're her normal eyes. They're not. It's not like she's a deadite. So I don't exactly know what they meant by that.
Yeah.
That is the director's cut. It's not in the actual, theatrical cut of that film. So who knows if it's supposed to be canon or not.
But then you get to the most important shot in the film.
It's true.
And it's at the very end. And you might think that that's odd because it's post-credits. Credits are done. And it cuts to this beautifully shot in a black room with a single white light filtering down onto the chin, forehead, and powerful nose of Bruce Campbell, wearing a blue button-down shirt with gray sides like Reed Richards. And Ash, in all of his glory, just says, groovy. And that's the end.
And then he turns to look at the camera, and there's a music sting, and then we go to black.
And there's no reason for it.
Nope.
It's just ridiculous.
No.
And it's amazing in every way.
A lot of people have thought of that as it's him giving his approval, his sign off of I like this one.
See, to me, it also might just serve to be like, oh yeah, no, these both happened.
Yeah.
His story happened. Her story happened. These things existed. So it makes sense that people in different walks of life might find it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, Fede Álvarez, he had kept things, he liked to keep it kind of ambiguous at the end there. Especially because much like in the Evil Dead trilogy, there are some inconsistencies between all of them.
Yeah.
So they had he was kind of leaving it open for a possible sequel later if it did well enough. Well, it did well enough. And so there was talk of it kind of reinvigorated them being Sam Raimi and Bruce and Robert Tappert, to possibly do another sequel to The Army of Darkness. So there was some real talk about doing an Army of Darkness 2. And possibly after, if that was a success, then doing a crossover movie between the two and having Ash and Mia team up. But that didn't end up coming to terms.
Again, I'm happy for that.
Took Army of Darkness 2 and they kind of reworked that into what became Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV show.
Yeah.
That ran for 3 seasons.
Which that's where that needs to go. That needs to go long form. It needs to turn into TV. And tonally taking The Evil Dead and trying to push them together in any way makes zero fucking sense.
Yeah.
So I think the way it panned out may not have been exactly what they wanted, but I think that that's the better way to have done it.
Yeah. And then eventually any sort of idea for a sequel to this film was kind of scrapped and then reworked into what became Evil Dead Rise.
Well, which I think works perfectly fine as a follow-up to this movie. And I've quoted in this show several times, I've been quoted to say that Evil Dead Rise is the most frightening movie I've ever seen. And that's true. This was that movie for me for a very long time until... Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at @DRosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo design by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.
Egg salad and eggs.